Have you ever felt like modern parenting is just an impossible task? Well, today we're going to dive into a really fascinating framework that looks at this challenge in a whole new way. It's not about a personal failing, but maybe, just maybe, a systemic one. We're going to explore this idea of a sacred village as a kind of map for navigating childhood consciousness and that tricky thing called the ego.
So here's our game plan. We'll start by looking at the incredible pressure parents are under today and how that connects to something deeper, the rise of the ego in childhood. Then we'll get into the solution, the sacred village, unpack the philosophy behind it, and see how it totally redefines what we might think of as good news.
All right, let's kick things off with the problem, something I think so many of us can relate to on a gut level, the sheer, crushing weight of modern parenting.
Man, it just gets right to the heart of it, doesn't it? The argument here isn't that parents aren't trying hard enough or loving enough. The real issue is that the fundamental support structure, the village, is missing. The system itself is the problem.
And this is about so much more than just the practical stuff. I mean, of course, a village helps with meals and chores. That's obvious. But the real kicker here is the emotional load. The source material makes this incredible point, that a child needs emotional attunement from lots of different people to build a healthy sense of self. And that, well, that is just too much to ask of any two parents, no matter how amazing they are.
So, this external problem, this heavy load on parents, is actually deeply tied to an internal one. Let's dig into what the source sees as the root cause, the totally natural and, necessary rise of the ego.
Okay, to really get this, we have to talk about this idea of Eden. Now, we're not talking about a physical place. It's a psychological state of consciousness, especially in early childhood, from birth to around age 8. It's this beautiful time of oneness, before the ego really kicks in and creates that feeling of being separate from everything and everyone. And you can literally see it happen on a timeline. From around 4 to 5, you get that first little flicker, this is mine. That's the ego showing up. But a kid at that age can still snap right back into a state of love and connection. The really big shift happens around 7 or 8. That's when the ego solidifies and goes from simple possession to moral judgment. You are wrong. That's where the separation really starts to feel real.
And here's the crucial point. The ego developing isn't a bad thing. It's supposed to happen. It's part of being human. The problem is when this incredibly delicate process happens in a vacuum. Without that wider support system, without a village, this journey can actually create deep, painful fractures in a child's sense of who they are.
So what do we do? Well, this brings us right to the proposed solution, the idea of creating a conscious, or sacred, village as the perfect environment to navigate this whole critical phase of development.
You see, the village isn't just a passive safety net. It's got 4 very active jobs. First, it models a different way of being. Then, it actively conditions healthier ways of thinking into the child. Third, it's there to nurture and reassure them when the ego's growing pains start to hurt. And maybe most important of all, it acts as a buffer, protecting them from those deep inner breaks we were just talking about.
So what's the operating system for this village? This whole framework is built on 3 fundamental laws. And the idea is that they're meant to be taught and embodied during that Eden state.
Now, this is a really important distinction. These are not rules for being a good kid. Think of them more like practices. They're preparatory laws. You embody them in one level of consciousness to get you ready for the next one. They're tools for growth, not the finish line.
The first law is obedience. And I know what you're thinking, but hold on. This isn't about submitting to some external boss or authority figure. It's about learning to listen to and surrender to your own inner authority, that still, small voice of truth inside you.
Second is the law of sacrifice. And again, this isn't about giving up external things like your favorite toys. It's an internal act. It's about sacrificing the reactive passions and the protective lenses that the ego puts up to defend itself. It's about letting go of those walls. And finally, those first 2 laws are basically training for this last one, the law of the gospel. Gospel just means good news. And the good news, in this context, is this profound realization that the separation we feel, it's an illusion, that deep down, everything and everyone is interconnected.
So let's dig into that a little more, because this philosophy really flips the script on some of these really powerful concepts we think we know.
This slide just lays it out so perfectly, right? The typical dualistic mind sees the world in terms of hierarchy, control, someone up here, someone down there. So to that mind, obedience is all about submission. But if you shift to non-dual awareness, obedience becomes an act of pure empowerment. It's surrendering to your own inner wisdom.
So what does this good news, this gospel, actually look like in real life? Well, it's the deep knowing that separation is just an illusion. It's the feeling that I am one with the soil, the river, the animals, that I am one with you. It's this radical idea that no one is fundamentally wrong or bad. Instead of all that judgment, there's just conscious choice. Filter through virtues the village helps you see and live by.
And that really brings us to the final and maybe the most important question. This whole framework was imagined for a world that had literal villages. So for us today, in our often disconnected world, what does a village actually look like? Who are the people that can help model this for our children and, for ourselves? That's a pretty big thought to chew on.